Geraldo is back to talk about this at 24 past the hour. You know, on the one hand, Geraldo, it's obviously, you know, the President of the United States in quote-unquote normal time says one thing. Leaders of Iran say another. You say, well, all right, well, we know what the President is saying. That's what's happening. Is that the case here? Or is it, do you think, more complicated in terms of the talks? What do you think's really going on?
I wish I knew, and I hope that Iran is intact enough in terms of management and leadership that they can put together a cohesive team that can negotiate with the United States. I'm not at all convinced that you know, we know exactly who is running Iran at this juncture. Having said that, I put a lot of stock in what the president says when he says that there have been talks. I don't believe that the president is lying to the American people when he says there have been high-level talks, that they have been constructive, and that the end result of these talks will be the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I guess all that remains to be seen, obviously, but it seems to me that for the president to say that, and then the Speaker of the Parliament apparently is the latest guy up. It's just extremely difficult, it would seem to me, for Iran to put together a negotiating team. They go someplace and they're in an office building, they're all meeting about the future, and all of a sudden comes you know, a Tomahawk missile through the chimney. You know, it's a very, very volatile situation. It does not seem to me that the situation on the ground is as optimistic as the president has suggested it would be. Some pundits, you know, are charging President Trump with just putting a rosy glow to help the stock market. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that that Witkoff is obviously and Kushner have obviously been meeting with somebody. I hope that it's the right body, and I just hope that that body doesn't get blown up in the course of these negotiations.
Kind of wonder if Israel's going to let one of these guys live so that they can have a negotiation with somebody. I mean, Larijani was the
one that be nice?
who was, you know, nobody thought was necessarily a good guy, but a guy maybe that could have been dealt with. He's dead now. This parliament speaker, to your point, might be the next one up, and he's one of the ones claiming that there's no talks happening. In terms of what President Trump, and he did say this earlier, what he claims Iran's already agreed to, and that'll be the next question, is like, all right, if you cut a deal, is it a good enough deal? Here's what he said about that earlier, the president.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
They've said yes to that?
They've agreed to that.
Well, I've said, you know, they've said that before, though, right, Geraldo? What they do is the question. And, you know, what would be the bare minimum, do you think, to cut a reasonable deal to end this conflict and be able to call it a, you know, a relative success from the United States point of view?
Well, take it from the last one first. I think that the 440 kilograms of enriched uranium that is unaccounted for right now internationally, that's where you have to start.
Yeah.
You know, Strait of Hormuz and the effect on the oil market, of course, it's profoundly significant to the world economy, but it's not the end of the world. And I think that that nuclear potential, particularly when you combine it with that rocket shot 2,500 kilometers to Diego Garcia, an Iranian rocket. Now you got a rocket that can go ballistic, that can go far, can reach all of Europe, basically. And if they're developing that technology, that ballistic technology, then it does not seem to me to be that far-fetched that over not that long a period of time, that circle will grow to include the east coast of the United States. You know, I think that the specter, the nightmare of that nuclear Iran, particularly a country that is not really being managed in a way that normal countries are because of the exigent circumstance and the leaders getting killed. You know, I don't want the rocket guy and the nuclear guy to get together and make something that could really cause the end of the world here.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.